Joining us now as our first guest of the day is one of our favorites on BYU Sports Nation, longtime friend of the program. He is the Senior Director of College Football and the NFL Draft at Pro Football Network. His name is Cam Mellor. Cam, happy football eve of sorts, my friend.
We're here. It is. It's football eve, right? Less than 24 hours away. I'm gonna have to go say happy birthday to Greg in person. I didn't realize we were in town for the soccer match tonight. Just in my backyard, the shoe, Ohio State. So I might have to go over there and check the game out.
That's right. You are in the heart of Columbus. And frankly, not just soccer world for BYU tonight, but college football world. I mean, what a place to be for you. What's this time of year like for you as you mentally prepare for another football season?
Oh, it's getting ready, the family life, but it's also getting ready to work the crazy hours. The summer leads 4-day weeks, work weeks roughly. You're watching film all the time, but nothing really starts until tomorrow, Saturday hits. And it's, you start with game day and then you move on. For me, it's 12 hours at least straight of football from the noon kickoffs. And, I don't call it a night until that final whistle of the Hawaii games.
Cam, we got a stock market theme going on today's show. Which BYU player are you buying stock in right now?
Right now, just thinking of the stock market for chance, obviously Jaron Hall is the easy answer, but right now, Blake Freeland. If nobody knows who he is nationally, it's Blake Freeland. You need to know this kid right now. He might be a local star. Might know who he is in and around the state of Utah, perhaps, but the massive left tackle in a left tackle void that is the NFL. I think he is an NFL starter very soon, but also he's a dominant left tackle. And for as big as he is, I don't think people give him enough credit for how well he moves too. So for me, Blake Freeland, before the national eyes get on him and the draft picks get on him in January, and they start saying, wait, who's this kid from Provo?
I think you're Blake Freeland's new best friend.
Cam Mellor is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Let's keep the stock theme rolling, Cam. You mentioned Jaron Hall. You've been high on him for a long time, just like you were high on Zach Wilson for a long time. We think he's going to be late first round, early second round pick when all is said and done. Blake Freeland, who knows how high he could fly. It just depends on if he can stay healthy and do his thing. But who's the guy that maybe is a little off the board, or maybe people have forgotten about, that you're like, the stock price is really low. I'm on the long game with this guy, and I think he's going to surprise people by the end of the season. Who's that guy?
To me, Keenan Pili. I'll start there. I think people may know who he is, but if he stays healthy, I've heard comps to what he means to the defense of a Jalen Petrie from Baylor last year. So if you look at a kid like that who had Jalen Petrie been 3 inches taller, we're talking about him as a top 5 pick because he's got Derwin James-esque ability. So if Pili's getting comps like that, this is not just from scouts in the local area. This is national. So if Keenan Pili is a 12-game starter, 13-game player, if there's a bowl game at the end of the year, which there should be, we're looking at him sort of, I think right now, get in. People need to pay attention to who he is as well, because that's sort of he's not quite off the radar in the sense that he's, not played meaningful snaps in his career before, but all 3 facets of defense that he does very well when he's on top of his game. So Keenan Pili is my guy on that defense right now.
All right, let's look at the futures as we continue with the stock theme. As you forecast what's coming for BYU in the season ahead, who are the teams that Cougar Nation should be very leery of that BYU will face?
I've said it before. One of the harder things right now, I think, in September especially, is going down to Florida, Central Florida. So honestly, that season opener against USF, Jared Bohannon is also getting a lot of looks from the scouts as an NFL quarterback, which may surprise some because he, lost the starting job at Baylor and then transferred to USF. But this is a kid who is an upperclassman, going to be invited to all the All-Star games in the postseason here as well. So Jared Bohannon, but to me, it's Baylor. That team is stacked with NFL talent, even losing as much as they did to the draft this past year. If you look at it, they got Jackson Player, the defensive tackle transfer from Tulsa, to pair with Siaka Ika on the inside. And then they have Al Walcott. He's about 6'3", 220 at corner, and he moves like he's about a 5'9", 4'3" speed guy. Ooh. So to me, that defense is still incredibly talented. And then I don't need to tell anybody there, but Eric Mateos and Jeff Grimes know what they're doing on the offensive line. So that offensive line has about 5 NFL players at least.
Yeah, Baylor is an interesting case because, as you mentioned, Cam, they lost a lot of top-tier talent. And it's always hard to assess, okay, well, how much will that impact a team, especially early the next season? But you're high on Baylor. Oregon is a team that brings back a ton of talent, but they've got a new coaching staff. They've got a transfer quarterback from Auburn and Bo Nix. And they're right there with Baylor in the national polls, just a couple of spots behind, if not one spot behind in the AP poll. Are you as high on Oregon as you are on Baylor? And if so, why or why not?
In my offices, we call him No Nicks. So I am not very high on Oregon at all this year. I think it's actually a step down going from Anthony Brown to Bo Nix, in my opinion. I know he's got 4 years of SEC starting underneath him, but that level of play he brings is not sustainable. It's, his highlight reel plays are when he's flush from the pocket, running around using athleticism, and it's just not sustainable. So to me, Ty Thompson should be the guy going forward for them. Their offensive line is going to be good. Let's face it. Sewell is as good as anybody is at their position at linebacker. And so if Justin Flo plays well, there's a lot of talent there. Christian Gonzalez, the corner, though, the Colorado transfer, is a guy that I think people need to pay attention to, recently getting first-round buzz. And so, yes, I'm high on their defense as a whole, I think, overall. But as long as Bo Nix is quarterback, I'm not very scared of that Oregon team.
BYU Notre Dame speaks for itself. It'll be huge in October. But the following week, Arkansas comes to LaVell Edwards Stadium. What about that matchup for BYU?
There's a lot of talent, too, there as well. If Sam Pittman's done one of the more miraculous jobs, I think, of turning around a program, if you consider what the level of play they have to play with 8-9 games out of the year and how much they're competitive now where they weren't just a few years back. So it's been built up from the ground up. Pittman doing it right on that offensive line. Ricky Stromberg, one of the best centers across the entire nation. Jalen Catalon, though, another guy that if he added 20 pounds and 2 inches, he'd be talked about in that Jalen Petrie, Derwin James-esque light. So if he stays healthy, they've got a lot of talent as well. But I think overall, Arkansas is still about a year or two away from competing in the SEC. And then by that time in the season, injuries might take hold. So I'm going to temper my expectations with Arkansas this year. And I'm still putting stock in that Baylor team as the more stacked team that BYU has to face this year.
Senior Director of College Football and the NFL Draft at Pro Football Network. His name is Cam Mellor. He's on BYU Sports Nation. The Cougars are 8 days away from a very tricky contest, as we've discussed, against USF. Is there any other sneaky game on BYU's schedule that you see, Cam, for the Cougars?
No, I think, honestly, if you look at it, you have to start with the top, what we talked about. Notre Dame, to me, I think is where that's probably the only game right now. Baylor and Notre Dame are the only two that I'm looking at. They shouldn't be within at least 3 points, 4-point favorites, or favorites, or at least close. I think people are going to buy a lot into Notre Dame. I think that one you put your hat in, or put the pin in your cap, and then just don't sleep on any of the Mountain West teams this year. I could pick them all out and decide which one I want and talk about quarterback play, but at this point, focus on Notre Dame, but also have that peripheral vision going on all those Mountain West teams we got to play as well.
We all need our peripheral vision. All right, in October, BYU is going to get their first Big 12 schedule. Who do you want to see the Cougars host in that P5 opener here?
That's tough. To me, if we're looking at the Big 12 landscape of 2023, bring in like a UCF or a Cincinnati, and really let's take on those teams. Let's initiate into the Big 12 play. Other than that, bring on like a Texas Tech. Let's see how they contend with one of those teams that is a middling Big 12 team to really gauge how well they're going to fare against those teams, against the Big 12 in a full Big 12 slate. Texas Tech, TCU. We'll see what Iowa State does this year. They're always good, but with what they have to replace next year, who knows what they're going to look like next year. So to me, Texas Tech, one of those teams. Texas team. Bring a Texas team in, not named Baylor.
I cannot wait, and I think I speak collectively for every BYU fan for what that first Big 12 schedule is going to look like. Cam, before you go, I want to go back to some personnel questions within the BYU football team because, frankly, when it comes down to assessing talent in BYU, like, you're kind of at the forefront, have been at the forefront for a long time, calling your shot and being right about that shot. A guy you were very high on 2 years ago was Peyton Wilgar. Peyton has gone through some injuries. It was kind of a weird year last year because he had to change what he did because of the Keenan Peely injury, and Peyton himself wasn't okay. Where do you stand on the stock of Peyton Wilgar as an NFL guy who you were so high on a couple of years ago?
Still high on him. The injury history, though, obviously knowing what I do in every year that you look back and you say, what was maybe the ding on this player? Where was the asterisk that NFL teams had on him? And it's injuries typically. So unfortunately for Peyton, his NFL draft stock took a huge hit when he took the hit, and he was injured as well. So I'm still having him as a 3-down linebacker, both at the college and the NFL level. But right now, I think he's that long shot to get drafted that maybe pushes it to 4, 5, 6 players that could be drafted on this team within the first 7 rounds. But if he's not drafted, he's a guy who signs with a team immediately, if not before round 7 is over, as one of those preferred undrafted free agent guys. So a full slate of 12 games of action for him, where he's playing the majority of snaps on defense, I think gets him back into that day 3 range. because I think his coverage and his versatility to stop the run and then rush the passer is sort of unmatched at his level and what he does.
Let's go a little deeper into your crystal ball here. With the news from earlier in the week that Oregon has been talking to the Big Ten to see if they might be a fit here in the near future. With that surfacing, what's the situation in the Pac-12? Do you see 4 teams still going to the Big 12 from there? Does the Pac-12 go away? And on top of all those questions, how can anyone in the Pac-12 trust Oregon if there's any truth to the notion that Oregon's talking to the Big Ten?
Hey, you can't really trust them, right? You can't. They're always going to look out for what's best for them, and so you can't trust them at this point with all the reshuffling. To me, when the media rights were established and we saw how much more money's baked into the contract for the Big Ten, and then there was that caveat that said they're not done expanding, I would assume that they aggressively get as many teams as they can in a bigger market, or at least a marquee name. So Oregon's still a marquee name on the national landscape. They'd be silly not to try to bring them on. And then get that. So to me, I don't know how much longer the Pac-12 has on their plate coming forward. If Oregon's plucked, and then if they're not done in the Big Ten, 1 or 2 more, I would assume we've seen the last of this will be the last competitive Pac-12 season in terms of top tier play. In the end, probably is near if Oregon leaves. I think that'd be the tip of the iceberg.
So many question marks for sure with conference realignment. But we'll finish with this. Speaking of questions, Cam. What's the biggest question mark you have about BYU football in 2022?
I think besides Tyler Batty, I want to know who rushes the passer. I want to see who can get after the passer, both not only just on the outside, the opposite, but also inside. Can there be enough pressure on the inside? Because the question marks also are a little bit back in the secondary. There's a few stars. But I do think that if pass rush and coverage, they're almost equally important. I still put the emphasis on coverage being more important, but pass rush is very important as well. And so need at least 2 edge defenders and a guy who can push the pocket on the inside. So I want to see who does that, who rises to the occasion this year.
Cam, you are truly the insider, and I just hope you find time to sleep. As a family man, no less. We're all on this boat together, wives, kids. So if you have some advice for us on how to handle it the right way, Dave and I, I'm sure, would take that advice happily.
I'm still learning. I think every new season's an adventure. Right now, I got my 3.5-year-old, near 4-year-old saying, I can't wait for football to be over already. That I think is going to get me up right around those 3:30 games after I've been down for about 3 hours on Saturdays. I think I'll probably make my way upstairs to be around with them. So it's a balance, I think, is what I've found is the best way.
Outstanding. Cam, great to talk with you. We're taking your stock options to the bank, and we'll discuss again soon. Enjoy the weekend of football.
Pleasure, guys. Football's back. Thanks for having me.
You got it.